From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is The Hub with Wang Guan.
Hello and welcome to The Hub. I'm Wang Guan in Beijing. Guatemala is the most populous country in Central America, has for decades opted for its so-called diplomatic relations with Taipei. Some see the inauguration of its newly elected president, Bernardo Arevalo, as an inflection point for Guatemala to consider the question of whether Beijing or Taipei. What is the reality on the ground? With the recent re-establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Nauru, could a diplomatic shift be expected in Guatemala? To discuss all these questions and beyond, I'm joined by a first-hand observer of China-Guatemala relations who visited China several times since the 1990s and led the Guatemalan delegation to the Shanghai World Expo back in 2010. Let's meet Pedro Barnoya, president of the China-Guatemala Chamber of Cooperation and Commerce. Pedro, it's so good to have you with us. To be honest with you, you're the first Guatemalan ever been interviewed on our program on The Hub on CGTN. Of course, officially, we do not have a diplomatic relations. Guatemala currently does not recognize China, but we do have this very significant trade and investment relations. Maybe you can first start by telling us a bit about the significance, the size of our bilateral economic relations.
Guatemala and China has been growing in our trade and economic ties probably in the last 20 years. Basically, after the Expo Shanghai 2010 and after the Olympic Games, Guatemala see China in another fields as sports. Economic development of China has been nice for all the Guatemala people to see.
In 2022, the bilateral trade amounted to $4.94 billion US dollars, reflecting a very significant year-on-year growth that is 13%. How do you see our bilateral trade to grow further?
It's reasonable to think and predict that in an optimistic growth due to the positive momentum of China and Guatemala, the exchange between both countries will continue to grow exponentially, like it has been growing after the pandemic. This, of course, is going to depend on the reinforcing of strategic agreements and diversifying products and services. Basically, Guatemala is a supplier of diverse commodities, and China is a leading supplier of technology and countless of goods. It is important to note that China is right now recognized worldwide for manufacturing high-quality products. It's not only the made in China, now it's high-quality products made in China.
Currently, we do not have this diplomatic relations. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the difficulties, the challenges that the chamber that you're leading is facing when there are no official diplomatic relations? Through which departments and ministries do you help facilitate trade? How do you hope trade and access to be further enhanced?
We have been working for more than 20 years to develop economic ties and to exchange cooperation. For almost 20 years, we have focused on fostering business-to-business relationships, facilitating trade, missions, engaging dialogues to promote mutual exchange, understanding, cooperation. Despite the absence of formal relations, we organize trade fairs to cultivate connections. These kind of things support and cooperate in between both countries. We make also educational programs, seminars, had a lot of participants. Many people from Central America also travel to Guatemala because Guatemala is the most powerful economy of Central America. We make also connections in between professionals of different sectors, and these kind of things support more and more cooperation in the future. Basically, something that was very nice for China and Guatemala was the World Expo Shanghai 2010. Regardless, the not diplomatic relationship was an historic moment for Guatemala. More than 73 million people, visitors, were in the Expo Shanghai 2010. 3.5 3.5, 3.6 million people visited our pavilion during 6 months of this exhibition. And of course, strengthened Guatemala and Chinese friendship ties. Also, we participated in Expo Beijing in 2019 before the pandemic. And things important like the participation of Guatemala, China Chamber of Commerce in APEC 2014. That was an historic moment also.
How do you look at China's opportunity as a marketplace with 1.4 billion population and some 500 million people potentially moving into the middle class, projected in the next few years? Does that present a huge opportunity for Guatemala, for the organization, for companies that you represent at the chamber?
Yes, of course. It's well known that China development is growing so fast, and you make bridges, you make investments in worldwide. That's why Guatemala need to improve and make not only agricultural products. China has a lot of opportunities. The middle class, as you say, is growing so fast, and that's a lot of opportunity. We see when we face that in Expo Shanghai, we face that there are products from Guatemala in coffee, chocolate, sugar, and added value products. I think Guatemala need to export to China added value products of high value, not only commodities and raw materials. Something we have to do is to export more products to China, to make more, to participate more in the opportunities that China give us, like the exports fairs in China. And Guatemala has to visit and explore more communications, more visits. It's essential to cultivate connections through the strategic and equitable agreements, seeking for new opportunities, ensuring the sustainable increase of becoming genuine partners. I think there's a lot of opportunities, but Guatemala and China need to go in the same road.
Talking about going to the same route, many are interested in whether or not you think there can be this domino effect whereby a number of Central American countries have shifted their diplomatic relations from Taipei to Beijing. The current administration of Guatemala, they expressed interest in strengthening relations with China. But do you think we might expect some breakthrough in diplomatic relations during his term?
Okay, this is a difficult question, and we have to be very careful. But Guatemala is a country with a very special peculiarity, and this makes China and Guatemala ties historically different from the relation between China and most countries in the world, including great powers. The relation has to go to different stages and to a complex process. Today, China growth, development, and importance in the context of nations is undeniable. Both nations must be clear that the mutual respect and is vital, and each one has the special value for their particularities, and has to honor the freedom to choose their own path to develop is essential. I think that's the clue. Each country has to go more deep relation, and to exchange more information. And I think most countries, as you told, are right now with China. Guatemala has to go more deep in the development of more relationships, cooperation, support, more real, and also something that will be very specific and good for Guatemala products is that Guatemala can start exporting products. Most of our association companies, associates, ask for us, can I export to China? And sometimes it's the taxes that are higher to export to China than other countries that has the diplomatic relationship, for example.
Like, for example, Panama? El Salvador?
For example, the shrimps of Guatemala are very nice, but
Yes.
we not export right now to China.
Chinese market, mostly we buy shrimps from Chile, Peru, America.
Peru, Ecuador.
Ecuador, hugely.
Another associate of our country export, for example, bananas, and they ask for us if we can do something to explore more the banana market in China, and that it makes sense if we have a better relation to export more bananas, for example, to China, or shrimps, or coffee. I think a good moment is to make more expositions. We have done in the past more than 7 exhibitions in Guatemala. The Guatemala Chinese Chamber of Commerce have been working to promote and exchange, to protect our Guatemala citizens, our Guatemala companies, because sometimes they want to buy from China, but they don't know. And that's a way to make better the business between both countries.
Yeah, for example, currently, if you are a Guatemalan business person or a student or a traveler who wanted to do business or to study or to visit China, how can you do it? Do you have to go to another country nearby to get the visa?
We try to help the people from Guatemala and don't give us an obstacle. We try to persuade them to visit, to wait to the time it has to wait for the visa. Also, we try that the people knows more about the opportunities of traveling. And of course, people that is the first time to travel to China, we give us a briefing, how they have visit China, the importance of the language, the cultural things. So the experience the people from Guatemala go to China is from the Guatemala Chinese Chamber of Commerce. We also give information to the people. It doesn't matter if they are not member of the chamber. We face like a house where the people can come. We explain them how to visit China, how to make business. We have the Guatemala China Sports, Cultural, and Technical Association. And with this association, we make more closer ties in different fields, not only the business, because business is one field. The cultural, Guatemala and China has more than 5,000 years history. Guatemala, the Maya culture, 3,000 years ago. So we are basically one of, and two, China, Guatemala, of the civilizations that founded the world. That gives us a different perspective from all the countries in the world. And that's something we must be clear to develop, because this history is only from a few countries in the world. And that's something we have to go deep.
What are some of the other priority items that you have in mind in exporting to the Chinese market? As you have expressed many times during this interview that you wanted to have more Guatemala companies and businesses to engage the Chinese markets.
Something very important for Guatemala is the export of services. I think China has done a nice job exporting services, platforms, and diversity of products. I am really surprised each 2 months, 3 months, I travel to China and see different products, different ways of making business. The pandemic, for example, was a opportunity for China. We make also, we make three trade fairs by the computer with China, and we need to export our products and our services. Many people from Guatemala travel to United States to live there because they need employment. And we need to make factories here in Guatemala to make new jobs and better jobs. That's something that could be good for both countries.